some things should just be left alone. Today I've got 15 of the best and worst re-recorded metal albums, and we're starting with Cavalera with Morbid Visions and Bestial Devastation. Now, I was fully prepared for these remakes to absolutely suck, but goddamn did Max knock it out of the park with these. The most obvious difference here right off the bat is in terms of atmosphere, with the original sounding a bit more evil, but the new version sounding totally pissed off, delivering a bit more energy too with that entombed HM2 buzzsaw guitar sound. It's clear that this was a labor of love, and Max also really put his all into the vocal performance. You can never replace the original, but this maintains the same spirit while giving it a modern twist that's easily in my top 5 thrash albums of 2023. So going over to the tier list here, which is really secondary to this discussion, but just helps us keep track of things, I'm going to put it at fantastic. Next up, we have Tool with Opiate 2, or Opiate Squared.
You are broken now, but they can't heal you. Just do everything I tell you to do.
As a longtime Tool fan, this really disgusted me, but opinions on this one were pretty divided. Some people raved about it, sucking it down their gullets like they do anything this band shits out. I even saw a few say it's better than the original due to the production.
You serious?
But for me, this version sucks all of the soul and angst out of it. I think that the more rugged 90s production and Maynard's more youthful attitude go a long way to highlight the sheer bitterness of the lyrics. I also just don't think Maynard really hits all the notes as confidently, and the little interlude that I realize they've already been doing live for years just feels kind of mismatched in the recording. It's a shame because in the past they have redone versions of tracks like Push It for great results, but this just felt like a lame cash grab. And I think that's just the first of many distinctions here in what makes a good versus a bad remake, some of the intentions behind it. Whereas Max, it felt like a labor of love, this just felt like a product that was pushed out to the audience to make a few bucks. So, going to the chart, this one's going to no. Next up we have Meshuggah with Nothing. I've been a big fan of this album since it came out when I was in high school, and since then both versions have their place for me, but I do think that considering their particular mission statement and direction their sound was going, the re-recording is the right version for them. This was already a transitional record moving from the faster, still at times thrash-influenced style of albums like Chaosphere and Destroy Erase Improve to the pure groove of Catch 33 and Obscene. With that context in mind, switching to 8-string guitars was clearly the way to go. Meshuggah is all about the low end, so the lower the better. My one detraction is that the re-recording also uses virtual drums, but they are triggered by the original performance, so it's not the biggest deal. And ultimately, again, they didn't ruin what was great about the original, and so for me, this is going to perfection. Then we have Moore's Principium Est with Liberate, the Unborn Inhumanity. This one really hurt because I love this band and have repeatedly called them one of the most underrated bands, not only in melodic death metal, but probably metal in general. Unfortunately, these reimaginings of songs from their first 3 albums give me the same vibe as the Star Wars reboots. The modern production just robs them of all that classic nostalgic charm, and most of the adjustments to pacing and melody are for the worst, in my opinion. It's all flattened out without any of the same dynamics or atmosphere. Once more, please take the time to check these guys out for their new and classic releases alike, but don't make this your entry point. You'd be much better served with the original versions in this case, I would say. So I'm putting this at Y. Next up is Malignancy with Intrauterine Cannibalism. This New York band's debut has grown on me a bit since my first listen, and as far as the more brutal and slammy stuff goes, I would say that this is one of the best. Killer drumming going on and great mix of chaotic technicality and infectious grooves from the guitar. That said, I'm still just not generally a big fan of this vocal style, and it gets old really fast with just the mumbly, gurgly blah, 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 blah. So enter this 2019 version, and I think they've managed to fix all of those problems while maintaining, if not improving, on the best elements too. Nothing feels lost in translation, another great example of how to do this right in my opinion. I'll be interested though, let me know down in the comments for those of you who disagree on these. I'd love to hear actually why you disagree with me and why you prefer the original or prefer the new version. But for me, this is going to great. Then we have Annihilator with Metal 2.
One by one, the fools suck you in, like many others before. One by one, the fools suck you in, like many others before.
It really doesn't help that the original album was already poorly received with just how corny it gets with tracks like Couple Suicide and the like 20 years late Van Halen energy of Romeo Delight. We were talking on Discord a while back about how metal bands should never go full butt rock, and this is the perfect example of why. I just can't imagine deciding to do it a second time. There are some half-decent moments like Clown Parade, which I played in the intro, and the harsher sounding vocals on those work well enough, but as a whole, in both cases, the title could not be more incorrect, and they just managed to botch it twice somehow. So this one is also going to no for me. Then we have Dimmu Borgir with Stormblåst 2005. Honestly, whenever people bring up re-recordings, this has been my go-to example of how to really get it right. Once more, I have a special spot in my heart for the original and its unmistakable, charming 90s lo-fi atmosphere, but considering just how far the band had come at this point in evolving into a full-on powerhouse of symphonic black metal, the new version really feels like its own thing entirely. Basic synth lines are replaced by choirs, symphonic instruments, and massive production, and Sagreth's vocals are so much stronger too. Extra props to sticking to Norwegian in the same places as the original as well. Notably, this also removes some of the synth elements that Stian had outright stolen from the Agony game soundtrack and Magnum's Sacred Hour. Really love this one. It is going to perfection for me. Then we have Nocturnal Mortum with To Lunar Poetry. Similar to Dimmu Borgir, this is a band that has advanced a lot from their modest traditional black metal roots and blossomed into a much fuller sound on their modern releases. Again, I love the charm of the original, but they really did make something altogether different here, both in minor and major changes. It actually isn't the same album compositionally either, with many additions and rewrites on top of the production and performance changes. I believe I recall the band even saying that this is more inspired by the original than what would be called a remake or re-recording in the traditional sense. Regardless, it's definitely worthy of your time, whether you've heard any of their stuff or not. I'm putting this one at fantastic. Then we have Pestilence with Levels of Perception. I was vaguely interested in this album, but it ends up being yet another case on this list of why. Not only are these just straight up re-recordings with the current lineup with little to no changes, they go for a more raw and retro sound production style as well. Like at bare minimum, it might be interesting to hear at least what these tracks would sound like with a more modern production job, but instead they seem to be outright attempting to outdo the original on its own home court.
Good luck with that.
It has its moments, some of the vocals can be kind of intense, but I mostly listen to this and just don't get any of the infectious energy of the originals, and it doesn't help knowing that Patrick is a bit of an egomaniac. Add a bunch of pissed off fans about the original AI cover, leading to an even worse album art, and this just didn't need to happen. So yeah, it is going to why. Then we have Exodus with Let There Be Blood. I feel like your thoughts on this one are going to largely hinge on whether you like Paul Bailoff's admittedly acquired taste vocal performance on the original. It's a ballsy move to re-record one of, if not the most famous album in your discography. And considering they have other albums that they've been on the record wishing they had a better crack at, I still don't fully understand the move. It's not all bad. In fact, I could see why some people might like this version more, but it's just one of those situations where the original is already beloved and the comparisons are going to be unavoidable. Personally, this just doesn't have all the same energy and rebellion I dug about what they did with the original the first time, but it's still, you know, I'm kind of on the fence with this one between why and great. I think it leans slightly more towards great. Then we have Testament with First Strike Still Deadly. Partial reunion lineup here made up of Chuck Billy, guitarist Alex Skolnick, bassist Steve DiGiorgio, and drummer John Tempesta, along with original singer Steve Zetro Souza. This consists of re-recorded songs from the Legacy and the New Order, as well as Reign of Terror from the Legacy Demo 1. Again, I could see taking your bad or lesser known material and making it better, kind of like Sodom did recently. We'll get to that one. But if you're inevitably going to have this compared to the original, I don't think many fans are going to say the new versions are better or even needed to exist to begin with. Much like with Exodus, these performances are all very good, but without that classic 80s production and same youthful angst, it's just not the same, and if anything, it just makes the band members sound older. Another one I was kind of on the fence with, but I ended up teetering more towards why with this one. Then we have Voivod with Morgöth Tales. Another really solid set of remade tracks here in that kind of compilation style as opposed to a full remake of a single album. In my opinion, Synchro Anarchy found the band back at the top of their game, and so to hear that injected into some of their best material is pretty awesome. Again, there's no replacing the originals, especially when it comes to classics like Killing Technology, Dimension Hatros, and Nothing Face. But considering I don't much care for some of their mid-career albums, the new paint job on those does strike me as an improvement. So far from the best or most necessary thing here, but it works for this band since they have gone through so many evolutions over the years up to this point. I'm going to put this one also at great tier. Then we have After the Burial with Rareform. This is such an underrated metalcore band from the classic era of the genre, and this is very much a case on this list of thinking that this re-recording is not only better than the original, it's probably their best album. The original was their last album with vocalist Grant Luoma, and to be frank, he was not very good. The re-recording finds some improvements to the musicianship and production, but most importantly, it marks now longtime vocalist Anthony Notar Maso stepping in, making for a truly night and day experience. Anthony just has a much more powerful scream, and it feels like him coming into the fold was the final missing puzzle piece that makes their sound work so well. Highly recommended you at least check out the track Ometh. This is going to perfection. Then we have Sodom with 40 Years at War, the greatest hell of Sodom.
It was time with the earth, like a belly show no remorse. It was at the time with the earth, like a belly show no remorse.
Another collection of re-recorded tracks from throughout their career, and honestly, this one sounds really great. I actually found myself surprised by it when it came out, given the relatively low expectations I had. Once more, it's really cool to hear the development of their songwriting over the years, but also in a way that showcases just how good they still are today. I also like that they set out to do one song from each album, and in many cases opting for ones that have rarely been performed live, something that I was looking for in those other compilation-style releases. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, but if you have tracks that maybe are a little broken, like those are the ones that need a little tender loving care. At 17 tracks, it's a little uneven, but good stuff nonetheless, and in some cases I do like the new versions in a similar way as with Cavalera, so it is going to the same tier with them at fantastic. And then we have In Flames with Clayman 2020.
I can tolerate your sadness. I can tolerate your sadness.
This EP is made up of just 4 re-recorded tracks from their often lauded 5th album, and man, if Stormblåst is my benchmark for doing it right, this is my benchmark for doing it wrong.
Woof.
Heavier tracks like Bullet Ride and Pinball Map are fine for the most part, if kind of pointless in just how similar they sound to the originals. But then the clean singing moments, especially on Only for the Weak, are just terrible, to the point that they sound like borderline pop music. I physically cringe listening to that song with every muscle in my body, so you know this one is going to no, and I think I'll leave you with the meme I made when this EP originally came out.
So I was never really able to tell the story that I wanted to tell. I had very limited resources. I was frustrated.
I can tolerate your sadness.
So later on, I had the opportunity when we were thinking about reissuing them.
Just it's me that you're drowning.
I said, well, this is a great chance for me to experiment with a new technology and see if I can. And at the same time, fix a lot of things that I was really frustrated with the first time around. And so that was a great experience for me. So the final version is when they finally get out there.
Y'all check out one of these for another video. There's more than 1,000 on the channel at this point, which is crazy. And again, comment below, what are your favorites, least favorites? Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.